for topical issues. Nigerians must have something to say.
Arms. We don't need arms for anything. Let them put it into education.
They need to ban other arms now. What are they fighting for? Government should deal with them squarely.
Please help us bring back our guests. No money, no markets. We are dying. Everybody is crying. Nothing.
Any man God support, no man stops.
It's a prophecy I believe he must have received from heaven. Yes.
The people giving voice to the voiceless.
Is it what crazy or autocracy? Or what type of crazy is that? Except crazy.
News making the headlines.
Black Maria is to carry criminals, treasure looters that are in government today.
Sometimes it gets confrontational.
Slap you in the face. Excuse me, don't put words into my mouth.
Whatever it is that will bring our military to disrepute, I said to hell.
On Core Digest,
I want to know why I should be believing them.
every weekday, we bring all of these together and take them to the court of public opinion.
Everybody has the right in Nigeria.
Where you are the judge.
Welcome back. It's still your Still-Made participatory breakfast program called Digest on Core TV News Lagos. And today we are beaming our searchlight on the social investment programs. Could this be panacea to unemployment crisis in Nigeria? We'll be finding answers to that question in the course of the program. Well, joining me to discuss that matter, of course, the gentleman that helped with the review of the paper headlines is still here, Bola, by public affairs analyst. Good to have you again.
Thank you very much.
And to my immediate left, I have the Director General, Change Ambassadors of Nigeria, and he was a presidential candidate during the 2011 general elections. He is a Chris Nwakobia Jr. Good morning to you.
Good morning. My pleasure to be here.
Okay, so let's look at this. Over time, there have been different programs by different administrations, all to alleviate the sufferings of Nigerians and the unemployment crisis. But, well, we all know what became of them. What do we see about this one? Let's begin with you.
I think that if we're looking at broadly social investment programs, if I'm following strictly your topic, as a Panacea to the unemployment problem, I would say first that social palliatives, social investments will help assuage, alleviate hunger and suffering, poverty, but will it create employment? For a few, I think that all over the world, what essentially creates job and occupies people in the area of employment, it's the private sector. Government must enable the private sector, entrepreneurship, enable businesses to sprout, create an enabling environment for investments and investors to come in. Palliatives are what they are. Social investments, you want to, except you're looking broadly, social investments in the area of, that's if you want to call creating jobs for about 500,000 teachers as part of social investment. But I see that differently. I think that if I'm following what is in the news presently, if it is the social investments in the area of palliatives, feeding children in school, getting the young who perhaps need seed money, for investments to go into investments, the market women to assess loans at low interest or no interest position. Right. It will create some kind of jobs. Well, if you're looking at about 2 million, 3 million jobs per annum, 1 million jobs per annum, you have to create an enabling environment, a proactive economic policy that will allow businesses to thrive, that will allow the private sector to thrive, that will allow the small-scale businesses to thrive. Then, and then only, can you essentially say that jobs are being created and that the unemployment crisis is being tackled and etiolated, if you like.
Okay, but over time, really, the private sector has been working definitely, and there have been also calls for the government itself to churn out programs. Perhaps that's the reason the federal government has, embarked on these NPOWER social investment programs. Let's come to you, Bola. What future do you see for this? The graduates are to be paid 23,000 naira each in the course of the 2-year program. That's per month now. What do you see?
If you specifically want me to visit some of the demised projects or this, this social intervention program, I would want to believe that whatever I may say now would just barely be speculative. You know why? Okay, let's start by saying this is the first time in our political economic history that the government has taken the pain to embed social intervention program into its maiden budget. We've always had social intervention programs. I grew up in the Greater Lagos area, being familiar with some Japanese brands of vehicle. The very first set of Japanese brands of vehicle that came into Nigeria and motorbikes as a result of the Udoji program of 1975. Most of the bonds in the neighborhoods and most of the elders who were working, especially with the federal government, suddenly started owning cars. Owning a peculiar, in fact, one of them is even out of this thing now. The Japanese company that makes this thing has stopped making that. So beyond that, even President Goodluck Jonathan, SHOPI was a social intervention program, but was more of a palliative because it was extrabudgetary. It was when he ran into a political cul-de-sac that he was beaten to a position where he took it as a supplement.
There was UWIN too.
There was UWIN, and to be honest with you, I'm a beneficiary of UWIN in a way. Not that I got it directly, but one of the alumni of a training school that I run won UWIN, and today she has, in the last 2 years, she's been earning 150,000 naira per month. And in her first year of trading, she made 7.4 million naira net profit. With that money, she graduated to another level with us. That today a business that started as a shop in Abuja, today is on a 2.5 plot in Abuja, and we are both employing about 14 people. So in a way, such programs do work sometimes. It's just that because it's a government orchestrated program, there will inevitably be a lot of leakages if juxtaposed with the private sector. If the private sector were to handle it, the degree of sobriety of this government, especially as it comes to its anti-corruption, this thing will be tested by this kind of programs. But can I sit here and tell you that such programs are not good or are not going to be a kind of cumulative fillip to galvanize some degree of activities that may ultimately also stimulate the kind of growth that is needed through the private sector? I can't discountenance it.
Okay.
Especially the one that is targeted at recruiting teachers, not only the volume, 500,000 in any this thing. If you take 500,000 unemployed graduates out of the unemployment market as we speak today, it will be a good beep. And to think that they are going to be teachers, because you must remember that most of the people who teach in our primary schools today are usually school SAT dropouts. Especially in the primary schools, not only in the public sector, especially in the private sector. Now, if you train this much graduates who will be teaching in primary and secondary schools, you must remember that it is not, primary education is not exclusive, is not part of the government's thing. So they will now be helping to plug a hole that we know has been organically ravaging our education system since the last 25 years. And for those who will be trained in skills acquisition, I see not only people who will ultimately leave the program, being employable, but I see potential entrepreneurs in them, like the example I gave you about the girl in Abuja.
Okay, now stakeholders in the education sector have continually conversed that it's only those who have formal trainings in education, who studied education, maybe economics or whatever, should be the ones teaching. Now we're looking at about 500,000 people being employed. If you look at the case of recruiting 10,000 police officers, over 100,000 persons applied. What are we looking at here for the government to trim this number and ensure that they actually get those who can actually dispense knowledge the way it should be dispensed?
First, I think that we must be careful not to mumble the waters or ruffle the waters. The truth is that when you talk about employing teachers, that's outright employment. That's not social investment program. Okay, that's job creation. And so, and then when you talk about how you employ them, the federal government has said that in the case of some of the teachers who are not trained as teachers, they will be trained. Okay. That again, it's like an arm of job creation, which of course, if you're retraining and training people, that impliedly means the government is doing quite a great job. I think that first we have to salute that part of it. But interestingly, it was part of the APC manifesto when they talked about how to train and retrain our graduates so they become employable, and then those who seemingly are unemployable are able to get jobs. I do sincerely think that I must align with my brother when he said that for the first time in our history, and particularly in our democratic voyage, a budget is coming out and saying that I will attend to the masses of our people. If you look at the budget, you'll find out that it's amazing. You have provision for about 100,000 naira support loan to women who would otherwise not have capital, but they want to do business, and you have interest-free, and then you have some to about another 500,000 young people who will be trained in vocations, and then that will ameliorate, that will reduce, that will tame down the number of those who are unemployed. I think that beyond that, because our country is very good on paper. I belong to the party in power. I sympathize with Mr. President. I do sincerely believe that a lot can be done to make our country better. But beyond what we say on paper, because I have repeatedly said that oftentimes when we discuss this country and when we try to provide solutions to our problems, we want to cut a tree from the fruits. We want to cut a tree from the leaves rather than maybe cut it from the stem or uproot it. And so we oftentimes beg situations. I do sincerely believe that now that we have a massive unemployment problem, look at the banks retrenching and sacking people by the day. Now that we have a massive unemployment problem, we have to look at our economic policy, because the greatest employer all over the world is the private sector. And what is important for us as a nation is to begin to look at how we make our country work again. And fundamentally, I have said recently that as we look at short-term solutions, which is of course the social palliatives, which is of course the social investments, we must begin to look at how we devolve our system, allow for fiscal federalism, if you like, a devolution of power, if you like, resource control, but we have to be true to what we say on paper. If we say that this country is a federal republic of Nigeria, we shouldn't run it like a unitary system. We have to allow, because for as long as we run this way, states will be unable to pay salaries. For as long as we run this way, people will lose jobs. For as long as we run this way, it will be difficult to get by at the end of the month. People will take home salaries that will not take them home. And so fundamentally, we must begin to look at how we devolve power to the federating units, allow for the return, because I'm talking about job creation here, allow for the return of the silos of cocoa through divesting of power from the top, allow for the return of the pyramids of groundnut and sesame, allow for the palm fields of the Middle Belt and the Midwest to sprout again. When you allow and diversify, as it were, our economy, and the easiest way and the best way to diversify our economy is to allow for an organic restructuring of the Nigerian enterprise. When that is done, jobs will be created. When that is done, jobs will sprout, the young will be employed, and then you have fewer skirmishes here and there, fewer crises and conflicts, and then you have a country that's largely at peace, a country whose workforce is employable, and those who are unemployable will be attended to by the social investment programs.
Okay, let's look at sustenance. It's always very beautiful to start. Everyone appraises it. Everyone praises. That's but right. How do we maintain this and ensure that the tempo doesn't drop?
You see, for me, I think one fundamental lacuna that I see in this particular program for me is the relatively small percentage of the budget that is dedicated to human capital development. I am one who believes that the greatest asset of any society is the human capital. And I am one who believes that when you have a society where the majority of those who even claim to be educated, or those who even claim to be this thing, when they lack marketable skill sets, you just have a community of clerks at best. And clerks don't work when people don't produce, because clerks only register things that are produced. Am I making a point? So that is why I would have loved that, and the government still has the opportunity to do it, because this is the first year, or its maiden budget per se. In its subsequent budgets, I want to see social intervention programs with large amount of monies like this, targeted at people acquiring practical skill sets. You know what? I can boast today as a Nigerian, I can boast that there is no city of Nigeria, no major city of Nigeria that I get to, including some of the cities that I've not been to. I was in Owerri the other day, and a white friend of mine was complaining that his vehicle was troubling him. And I just flipped my phone. One of my alumni functions in Owerri. I called him, and I've stopped calling them, because when they come, they want to take up my expenses. They want to just. So I'm enjoying that beneficence today because I run a training school. Look, day before yesterday, a social protection committee was constituted in the presidency, a presidential social protection committee. I was called about 1 week ago if I had anybody to put in that committee, and I said I have a young boy in Abuja who is an alumnus of my training program, started with a shop but now owns 2 shops and has employed about 9 persons. I was told Akiola is a member of that social protection committee. In fact, the day they were going to swear them in, he was calling me, was it Sunday night or Monday night, that he was praying. When you empower people, the guy is a graduate of accountancy. Today, he owns 2 viable auto maintenance and repair enterprises in Abuja, employing about 9 people. That when you want to solve problems in such a way that the solution will be sustainable, invest in human beings having the requisite ability to self-propel themselves. That is just fantastic. We cannot but commend the government for having the social democratic vision to do what most governments have not done before in Nigeria. But you know what? Good sometimes may turn out to be the enemy of best. So we should continually be challenging the government that subsequently, in subsequent budgets, these kind of programs should be targeted at human capital development, because that is what will make it, you know, sustainably, progressively creating prosperity in our society.
Now, let me take a cue from that example you gave. He studied accountancy, and today he's running an auto mechanic enterprise.
Shops, yeah.
Shops, okay. How do we ensure that we're able to match degree with skills? You know, this age, let's look at the issue of these teachers now. I know that it's not only NC holders or people who studied education who are BSc Edu.
What did you study?
I studied mass communication. Now, I know that it's not
very fortunate few in Nigeria
that are practicing, you know, what they studied, right?
You are sitting before a lawyer who is more of a social engineer. You understand what I'm saying? You are sitting before a communicator who is now who now runs the training institute, minting technicians. I'm going to England this year to spend 4 months to learn. I've started the course about 2 years ago, bricklaying, to learn site engineering. My sister, the world now, in the world we live in now, you cannot overbox yourself into any nomenclature. For dignified survival, you must be changing with the opportunities you perceive.
You have something to say about that?
I think that oftentimes when you look at how systems must work and how you must engineer society for progress and prosperity, you look at how you develop your youth, perhaps outside the box, and then you look at how you engineer the academic curriculum. Because, like I said initially, oftentimes when we discuss Nigeria, we want to fix things from the top. We don't look at where we got it wrong. I think that the time has come for us to begin to look at skill vocations as part of our academic curriculum. We must be true to what we say on paper. If you want to prosper, you do things unusually. That's why China is where it is today. That's why India is where it is today. That's where Brazil is where it is today. Nigerians are almost programmed for the white-collar job. You have your the 63334 system, and even at the first cadre of elementary, secondary education, people are not being prepared for vocations. And then when they even finish, you wonder, some will tell you, I don't even know anything about carpentry, because it's not, you have it on paper, but in practice, nobody teaches you carpentry. You know, I think that the time has come for us to begin to look at it, because beyond the programmatics, beyond the high-sounding words, beyond the beautiful programs and what you have on paper, what you must do is to have people, the human capital. You know, I'll give you a practical instance. Japan, for instance, does not have the wealth that we have buried in our soil. Japan is predominantly exporting human wealth, the human capital. And if God has blessed us with about 170 million people, then we are indeed a rich country. But unfortunately, we do not look at it as such. And I do sincerely believe that the first thing we must begin to do as a nation is to go back to our school's curriculum. And then second, return back history. And this is an advocacy as a course in our schools. People must know, you can't tell where you're going to except you know where you're coming from. And I tell you, the Japanese will tell you that he knows his history and he knows where he must head to. The Chinese will tell you, because the truth is that this is a country of great people who made the bombs called Obunigwe. This is a country of the great experts and technicians who sustained a 30-month civil war almost with
local the plateau that we are short of now, they refined it in Biafra.
And then you ask yourself, how did we lose all that? Why have we lost our beautiful halcyon moments in our history? How have we lost it all? So I think that the time has come, and fundamentally now, where we must begin to nudge leadership to ensuring that these skill acquisition projects begins from school. Remodel our school curriculum so that we have more engineers, more technicians, more experts who will begin to think about how we manufacture cars in this country, and not to think about how we produce pencils in 2 years. I say that with all sense of respect to my leader who is in the party. I think that fundamentally we have to start looking at concrete issues, concrete jobs, create and teach our people what we must do to move this country away from poverty to promise. And sizably, I know that there are a whole lot of lawyers who would want to be engineers. I know that there are a whole lot of, we have them, albeit not trained, in banks. You have graduates of agriculture as managing directors in banks. You have graduates of education, of education as MDs. And I think that fundamentally, a highly progressive world demands that people think outside the box. And now that we have a government that is saying that we must, because it's part of the APC again, manifesto, that you have to create and retrain and then create job centers where people will learn other vocations. But I think that the best way to start is to start from our secondary schools, where our young brothers and sisters, where our kids and our nephews and nieces will begin to think about other ways of employing themselves when they grow old, other ways of engaging themselves, rather than this myriad, this great number of the unemployed waiting for a job, perhaps in Zenith Bank or at Core TV.
And now the banks are laying off workers.
Because that's the tragedy of it all. And that is because successive regimes and previous ministers of works and employment, labor and employment and all the likes did not look at these fundamentals. Our educational system was not prepared for this day. Now that we have the day, quote unquote, of gloom, now that we have a day where jobs have become so expensive to get, now that we have the day where searching for a job is almost more difficult than searching for diamond in the earth, I think that fundamentally what we must begin to do is to rework our curriculum and make it in tandem with the realities of the 21st century job place.
Okay, so reworking a curriculum, that's one of the things that my guests here are positing for us to have as youth off the streets, for us to tackle this crisis of unemployment that has ravaged our system. You're still watching Core Digest on Core TV News Lagos. Let's take a quick break. When we return, we'll talk more about this topic. Join us again.
For topical issues, Nigerians must have something to say.
Arms. We don't need arms for anything. Let them put it into education.
They need to buy another arms now. What are they fighting for? Government should deal with them squarely.
Please help us bring back our gas. No money, no markets. We are dying. Everybody is crying. Nothing.
Any man God support, no man stops.
It's a prophecy I believe he must have received from heaven. Yes.
The people giving voice to the voiceless.
Every day, every hour, and every minute, news break in Nigeria. Things happen so fast, it's most times difficult to track and comprehend them. But that's what we do right here on Digi360. 2015, would you want to come back again?
It's like asking Jesus Christ if he knew he was going to die, will you want to come back as the savior of the world again?
We do not just help you track the stories, we break them down, explore all the angles, analyze the issues so that you can fully comprehend the stories and use them to make the right decisions.
With over 7 billion of world population and still counting, the world needs to hear you now than ever. Whatever your ministry or vision is, Gospel Africa will help get you there faster than you think possible. For inquiries and participation, contact 009 503 3859 or 0812-076-0011 or visit www.gospelafricang.com. Gospel Africa, your #1 media solutions for the church today. Gospel Africa, showing on this station at this time. Core TV News now live on all Androids.
Welcome to Core TV Primetime News.
Download Core TV News app from your Play Store. Click on the menu to see all our top stories. From politics, sports, business, foreign news and live TV to watch us live on your mobile.
I want to know why I should be believing them.
You can also click on video to see all our YouTube videos. Call TV News, a 24-hour news station.
Is it crazy or autocracy? Or what type of crazy is that? Except crazy.
News making the headlines.
Black Maria is to carry criminals, child looters that are in government today.
Sometimes it gets confrontational.
Slap you in the face. Excuse me, don't put words into my mouth. Whatever it is that will bring our military to the secret. I said to hell.
On Core Digest,
I want to know why I should be believing them.
every weekday, we bring all of these together and take them to the court of public opinion.
Everybody has a right in Nigeria.
Where you are the judge.
Thank you for being there. The program is still Core Digest on Core TV News Lagos, and today we're looking at the social intervention programs of the federal government. Could we say it's a panacea to ending the unemployment crisis in Nigeria? As I have my guest with me in the studio, Chris Nwakobia, the Director General, Change Ambassadors of Nigeria, and Bola Oba, a public affairs analyst. Thanks for being here, gentlemen. Before the break, we talked about sustenance, and I still want us to look at that continuity. I know that this first, do I say batch now, is to last the next 2 years. Well, the present government will still be in power then. What happens if in 3 years they are no longer at the helm of affairs? What happens to those people or the persons who come in 2 years after now? Yeah.
Social intervention programs or intervention programs don't last forever. The governments from the time of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, when he became the president of America, and he met America in a state of profound recession, he actually took up some major intervention programs to galvanize the economy. And one of the major landmarks or one of the major legacies of that intervention program is that famous dam that is now a touristic asset for America. President Obama, when he became president, people may have forgotten that when Obama became president of America about 8 years ago now, 7 years plus now, he became the president of America in a condition when the world, the globe itself, was in a state of recession. In fact, at some point they were using the word depression, and initially he seemed faced by it, but along the line some ideas came up, and one of the major fundamental social intervention programs that his government coined was targeted at the fundamental basis of why that recession was self-sustaining itself. That is helping those who were losing their houses. The mortgage, they had a targeted social intervention program to help those who were losing their houses not to lose their houses anymore, and to reverse the negative equity phenomenon to a positive equity phenomenon, so that growth could have a base to stand. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So social intervention programs don't last forever. That is why it is usually packaged to surgically go at a problem that if you solve that problem up to a point, there is no way you can totally extirpate a problem from a particular problem from a society. But when you have attended to it enough, so that the volume you have created within that subsector now powers a self-sustaining growth, you have done enough. That is why, like I said earlier on, and he also agreed with me, that the best social intervention program should be targeted at developing human beings in the areas of skills acquisition and enterprise empowerment.
To add to what my brothers just said, I think that fundamentally, and that's to directly approach that your curiosity. Government and governance is a continuum. After 2 years, if the programs finish, this government can attempt another one. There are different parts of our national life that demands attention. And I do sincerely believe that even after this government, once a laudable project is on ground and is yielding dividend, obviously the next government, if the Nigerian people think otherwise, would vote resources and time into social investment. I know that moving a country away from poverty is fundamentally a challenge of leadership. Leadership must show the way. That's what Mao Zedong of China said when he took up the responsibility of building a great China. And as you and I talk fundamentally, we have a country that is quote unquote, which of course our Minister of Finance has not denied. We're gradually hitting a recession, and that's what obtains in several other countries. Angola is going through theirs, and notably when the world went into recession about 8 years ago, the world leaders had to be challenged. First, like what my brother said here, the redemption of homes, mortgage, ingestion of funds into the mortgage business, so that the malfeasance that led to the collapse of homes, the Wall Street malfeasance, would not continue to deepen and cause Americans to perhaps attempt suicide and the likes. Now we have a situation that's almost akin to that. Loss of jobs and all that. But that is not enough to despair. Because almost always when your country is challenged like us, it opens doors for progress. Yeah. And I think that I'd rather see the cup as half full, not as half empty. And I see the light at the end of the tunnel. That's exactly why we commend the social investment programs of the government. And that's why, like I said, we must critically support government to ensuring that this, the reality, the expectations of our people met. I believe that if you have, just take for instance, 500,000 new teachers, that's if we're lumping it there, and then you have about 120,000 women who get jobs through the funding that comes from the budget, and and then you have young boys and young girls who are retrained to undertake, in terms of skills acquisition, to undertake new challenges in the workplace. Then ultimately you're going to have an economy that's being stimulated, and then you have the ripple effect is that more people will get jobs. The ripple effect is that not only will more people get jobs, people will become entrepreneurs, and then ultimately you find out that the quest for the white collar job will diminish, and then you find out that people are creating wealth and our economy will grow. That is why all over the world, I remember what Ronald Reagan said when he was challenged by an American economy that was dwindling in the 80s, and he said that America should call this time the time of its life, a blessed moment, because not only will you regulate the sectors of the economy that must be regulated, you will deregulate those sectors that must be deregulated. And essentially what you have is that the economy will grow out of the ashes like a phoenix. And what we have today is that kind of moment where no longer are we talking about a monocrop economy. We're looking at diversification. Interestingly, yesterday, I was happy when I read in the news and I saw the pictures of the planting of about 4 million cashew seedlings in Osun State. And I heard the revered Oni saying that he's ready to give as much as another 2,000 hectares of land for cocoa seedlings. And I do sincerely believe that we have a government that is poised at moving this country away from the jangling discord of poverty to the amazing place of promise. We have a government that is interested in creating jobs a la agriculture. We have a government that is interested in creating and stimulating our young people to try and their hands in order, vocation other than the ones they are certificated by the white man, permit my use of word, academic certificates. That the time has come, and I salute the media, I salute you for this beautiful topic, for the Nigerian people to realize that to remove from poverty we must begin to think outside the box. That to remove from the queues that every so often, ever and anon, litters our space, where young boys and young girls are at home for 6-7 years looking for jobs. Our people begin to use their mind and think outside the box, and those who can learn new skills begins to learn new skills. Those who can activate societal thinking will begin to do that, and ultimately will aggregate at that place where new thinking becomes the order of the day, and congregate at the parlor, where the parlor's tendencies of frustration that comes from unemployment will diminish.
Okay, that's beautiful. Well, this is to tell our esteemed audience that you can be a part of this conversation. What do you think about the social intervention programs of the federal government? Could it alleviate this unemployment crisis? Could it take it off a challenge that we are facing as a nation? Let's hear your views. The number to call is showing right on your screen. If you're calling from outside Nigeria, remember to include the short code +234. +234. The number is 0816-481-8001. Now, one of what the government set out to do is to tackle corruption in all its facets. And we know that one reason some of these programs that were initiated in the past did not totally succeed is the issue of corruption. Say those who are in charge of it get to personalize the funds and not use it for what it ought to be. How does the government ensure that this does not come to be in this case?
That is going to be a very Herculean task for the government. We are dealing with a bureaucracy that has, over decades now, as a result of the degeneracy in our society, a bureaucracy that is one of the best nurturing schools in the world for greed, for rentierism. I seldom see, I'm not saying there is none, I seldom see a civil servant in Nigeria now, or any public officer in Nigeria, who does not believe, and even if he or she does not believe, whose relations do not believe that his or her occupation of that office should ordinarily foment economic beneficence for him or her beyond his or her contract with the government. So, from the gate man that will open the gate for you in our ministries, to the clerk that should move your file from one table to the other, to the clerk that should put the papers together for his supervisory line managers to look at, to take it to strategic officers of departments like heads of department or PAMSEX. Everybody expects something. It's preposterous. It's viscerally. Sometimes it chokes one emotionally if you think about it. But that's the reality of our circumstance. I want to believe that the larger than life public moral persona of the president and his general his perceived asceticism may have helped to dump down, I'm not saying totally extirpate, to help to dump down or at least find some degree of sobriety in some of these characters. But ultimately the government must create a systemic mechanism that must bring public officers, either in the bureaucracies, state and federal, local, state and federal, or in public service generally, that must hold them to account for every asset of the Commonwealth at their disposal. My sister, if not, we are a society that has fallen to the nether of value, very nether, because some of the values that we were raised with have gone out of. So a systemic, apart from the body language, apart from the aggressive, appreciated that should be celebrated aggressive contention against corruption now. There must be systemic, and I am suggesting to this government that it is about time we democratized the fight against corruption. I was here with you a couple of days ago and I gave you the example of the FCPA in America, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, how it has helped to put the directors of Alibotting in America to jail now because some American citizens who pointed out to the American authorities that an American company functioning in Nigeria behaved unethically in a way inconsistent with the American law. Now, when the directors were convicted, the penalty, the hundreds of millions of dollars that the American judicial system penalized Alibotting, 10% of it went to those people. If that were to be happening in Nigeria, if we were to have an anti-corruption law that is somewhat replicative of that in Nigeria, you will not be seeing the A-list of lawyers only following the accused to court in Nigeria. You will be seeing some of those A-list of lawyers also supporting the prosecution because they know that their effort will be well rewarded if eventually there is conviction. But in Nigeria now, the 9 or 90 lawyers following people to court, it's not because they love them, it's because of
pecuniary. I think I can't agree less. The fact is that if you look at how things operate here, corruption is at the core of our problems. Look at the Shopee project, as laudable as it appeared. The humongous part of the resources ended in private hands. And I do sincerely think that our moral margins must be reworked. Beyond the fact that we have a great president who cares about reworking governmental margins and ensuring that corruption is dealt with, the truth is that the battle against corruption must not only wear the face, as it were, of our great president, but the institutions must wake up to the reality of now. The way to fight corruption, the way to kill corruption is for all of us to call and shame corruption, to name and shame corruption. And I do sincerely want to say that it is indiscriminate of whether you hold the broom or the umbrella. Yeah. It's indiscriminate of whether you're Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa, Ibibio, or the likes. It is about Nigeria, and it's about the destiny of our children and our children's children. The time has come for us to ensure that for whatever project that we inspire, we rework our margins so that it is not seen as an all-commerce empire where you come and steal, you come and loot, and our collective patrimony becomes a situation where I remember once when there's a party that when you hail the party, they say share the money. I think that the time has come for us to remove from those paradigms and practices and rework our collective margins. That's point number one. Point number two is the fact that, like he said, make the fight against corruption profit-driven. The Americans will say that when I blow the whistle, I'm protected by the state. When I pursue the victim and I ensure that justice is done, I am paid by the state. I think that when we do that, it becomes such that everybody will struggle to make sure that this country is working. Yes. It becomes such that everybody will, when you find a lot of our lawyers, because of course there's poverty in the land, let's be realistic, and then 90 of them will go behind a certain man and escort him like a movie star to the court, and because they want to be paid. But when you understand the fact that fighting corruption will actually get you more profit, when you understand the fact, because my dear sister, you know the figures you hear, mind-boggling, soul-rending, emotion-tormenting figures. You hear today 800 million found with this, 900 million found with this, 1.something billion. You ask yourself whether government was renamed a Santa Claus at some point. You ask yourself whether at some point, because I really wonder whether the Office of National Security Advisor was renamed to the Office of Naira Sharing Authority or Assistant, because the way it went, the profligacy, the waste of our collective patrimony is mind-blowing. And now as we talk, the fact that we must create jobs, the fact that we must reposition our country calls for, more than anything, a proactive, a concerted fight against corruption. I'll give you a practical instance. When Lee Kuan Yew, the man who remodeled Singapore, got to power, and they asked him in a press conference, I think about his third press conference, in his book, From the Third World to the First World, he said that he sat before the media and they asked him, what is your agenda? And he actually asked himself, what do I want to do? I want to fix my country, but how am I going to fix it? And then he said he had 3-point agenda. They asked him, what are your 3 points? And he said, to fight corruption, and to fight corruption. They wondered, oh, you just said one thing. He said, I'll fight it with my body, soul, and spirit. Because when you fight corruption, you will free resources for progress. You will free resources for building of roads. You
create an environment, an atmosphere for
where
creativity.
Business thrives, where ingenuity thrives, where creativity thrives, where people will decide to say, for my country, I'll give my best. And I do sincerely think that the time has come for us to all aggregate at that point. And I will ask Mr. President and those who are in charge of the anti-corruption regimen of government to look at not just those who wield the broom. Also look at those who wield the umbrella, and vice versa. I think that the time has come for us to make it far-reaching, because the Nigerian people support the fight against corruption, make it intense, and understand the fact that not only are we freeing resources for development, we're going to be reworking the minds of our children. Because I remember at some point I walked into a young boy who said that he just doesn't understand this fight against corruption where there's poverty everywhere, that he thinks that the government should bring back our corruption so that there will be jobs, there will be food and all that. And I wondered why. He said, because those who stole our monies are the ones still ruling. I think that not only do we need to fight corruption to make our country great again, we need to fight corruption to rework the sensibilities, the moral margins of our children. Because save and except that is done, a highly progressive world will watch and mock us. And not only will a highly progressive world mock us, our children, posterity will look at this generation and say, they defended corruption. They stood with corruption. They fought for corruption rather than fighting against corruption. And they left us a country bare-chested in terms of finance, comatose in terms of infrastructure, decrepit in terms of our bad roads, and bad educational system. I think that the time has come for us to understand that the life of this nation is intertwined. Like our president said at the Chatham House, if Nigeria doesn't kill corruption, corruption will kill Nigeria. And no statement could be closer to the truth, could be more appropriate, more trite and right than that statement. We must kill corruption so this country can grow again.
Okay, you want to
I quickly want to add something to the point I do on all fours with my colleague. The only example I want to give to an average Nigerian watching this program today is that sometimes government is not as omnipotent as we think government is. Because the resources of government are limited and the aspirations of government too are quite more. Governments world over are creatively now engaging the private sector to help it articulate and achieve some of its objectives. Why am I making this example? Why did the American, from the formation of America, why did they have the bounty hunters rule? You know, they knew that the sheriff was just one man. He probably had 1 or 2 assistant sheriffs, and yet the criminals were many in town. So you know what? You will reward some of the criminals who are as good gunslingers as the criminals, to go and catch the negative criminals. And when they bring those negative criminals, you reward them. You know what? If Nigeria today has a bounty hunters law on statute, you will be surprised that some wives, because they know the degree of the illicit wealth of some of their husbands, some wives will be telling the state, will be helping the state to get conviction.
Out of the call of conscience. Out of the call of conscience. That's absolutely true. I think that what we are actually saying is that our system must learn to think out of the box.
Oh, yes.
We must remove from the regular wire.
Oh, yeah,
fixation.
fixation.
We must remove from the regular wire and unwire ourselves into greater prospects. I think that the time has come for our leaders to look at how not only to make the fight against corruption profitable to government, and to those who believe that we must rid this country of corruption, but to make it beautiful, not for our children, you know, and our children's children. We must begin to see a corruption-free Nigeria as a diadem that we must embrace.
Let's quickly take this call. Joseph calling from Lagos State. Good morning, Joseph.
Hello, yes, good morning.
Morning.
I would like to contribute to the program about the unemployment crisis.
Yeah.
I think the government is trying their best. The 500,000 jobs that they want to provide for people. But the pay, the 20,000 is too small. Because looking at average Nigeria now, that will get you for a month. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
23,000 may seem small and is reasonably small to a man who is in Lagos, but if you are somewhere between Okitipupa and Akure, if you are somewhere between, say,
in my village of Ibuzo,
if you are somewhere between Makodi and this thing, 23,000 may make a lot of difference. In fact, it's more than the minimum wage. But having said that, I cannot sit here. It's the kind of money that people like us will spend, you know, in a single socializing this thing. But you know what? The sense of purpose of waking up to know that you are going to a place where you have self-worth, where you can add something to something, where you can pick whenever you go to work. I tell people who work for others, whenever you go to work, just see it as a grandiose opportunity that God is giving you to learn how to ultimately be self-independent too. So that sense of purpose is pricier than any amount that any government can give you. But for a society that has never tried it before, for a society that is now fortunate to have its first social-democratic government ideologically, we have always said that our politics has lacked ideology. This is the first time that a government in Nigeria, some people may be watching me this morning and will be saying, is better doing alright, sir, again after you have criticized. No, on some issues I lambast them. You know, the seeming slow-pacedness, the seeming this thing, but you know what? What is worth celebrating is worth celebrating. If this is the beginning, I want to believe that governments of other ideological this thing will be challenged to grow it.
Okay, now you want to add something?
Yeah, fantastic. I'm not surprised. If others at home are surprised, I think that I've always known him to be broad-minded in analysis. Let me say here that I believe in the manifesto of the APC. I believe in the programmatics of the government. I am passionately enthused about what is happening today, but I sincerely want to say that, like I wrote directly to Mr. President, I said, sir, we must be careful not to allow this process to be corrupted by greedy people. Oh, yes. You know, because the truth is that it is fantastic on paper, it is wonderful, and I want to believe that we'll follow it through. Because when we do, you find out that successive, because what we're doing is building a linchpin upon which posterity will thrive. If we do effectively, you know, the successive governments, whether of the APC or any other party, will build on it and ultimately becomes better life for the Nigerian people. I have said repeatedly that for me, my praxis is country first. And then that I wield the broom means that I believe that ideologically the broom is interested in making the Nigerian people better. But the way to success is that we have a vibrant opposition. Because oftentimes when we discuss these things, people think that, oh, to criticize our government is to be opposed to it. No, you can criticize within and outside. There is nowhere in the world where you have succeeded in terms of governance without a constructively critical mass. And that is why when Abraham Lincoln appointed Stanton his Secretary of War, Stanton was the greatest critic he ever had. Stanton called him all kinds of names. But when it was time for him to appoint his confidential Secretary of War, the closest person to him during the war, he took Stanton because he said that at every point, the man who will look me in the face and tell me you're doing wrong is my best friend in governance.
Okay, we have Precious calling from Ogun State. Good morning, Precious.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, I'm enjoying your program. I want to thank the people that you invited. They are really explaining this issue. Well, my own contribution is that the creation of 500,000 jobs for 500,000 people is a very nice initiative. Those that have been looking for jobs for years, at least they have something to put in their pocket and start their lives. It's a kudos to the government for that idea. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Precious.
Can I chip in this? About that caller that talked about 23,000 is small.
You called from Lagos, though.
You know,
and in Lagos, 23,000.
I can understand, but the fact is that when he tackled, you didn't have 23,000. You know, the American will say anywhere in the world, a cent given is a relief gotten. You know, even in Lagos, if a man comes to you, as expensive as fuel is today, a regular SUV can still be filled with 23,000.
Oh yes.
You know, so that's the point. And that 23,000 within Lagos can take you for almost a full week, even if you're very busy.
Oh, yes.
So I do sincerely think that it is a starting point to great philosophy, to a great ideological print on our time.
On our public administration.
I do sincerely think that we must salute government for this initiative, and obviously, if it is effectively managed and effectively handled, and I pray God enables us to do so, in the successive years, you find out that because it will stimulate the economy, businesses will sprout, more people will pay tax, more economy, more roads, you know. At the end of the day, you find out that
the basis of success,
yeah,
the prosperity in the society, sustainable prosperity.
That's right. At the end of the day, maybe in 2017 or 2018, it might just come up to 50,000. But what is important is that we're starting well.
Now, in this starting, we are in a Nigeria where people are quick to mention their state of origin. I'm from Ogun State, I'm from Lagos State, rather than referring to themselves as Nigerians, first of all. So in all of these, how do we ensure that the issue of federal character doesn't come up again? We have this number of persons have to come from this state. Or how would it be sorted? How would it be sorted?
I'm sorry to jump this. It must come up. And especially this government must be seen. And this is Balaba. This government must be seen to be engaging with our kindred and our brethren from south of the Niger River, the east and the south, because this government is in a cul-de-sac of perception that it must manage very well, that it must not be seen to only be serving the areas where the president was largely voted for, you know, northwest, northeast, southwest. Other parts of Nigeria are Nigerians too. People in other parts of Nigeria are Nigerians too. And we must remember that there is an extant statute, there is a law as we speak, that says that things must be done in such a way that Nigerians across the broad spread of our geography, Nigerians across the broad spectrum of our ethnicities must have a sense of belonging in the activities of any government. So I cannot sit here and say just take only the first 500,000 graduates who apply. We must have a way of domesticating it to state. And I will not be surprised, because the last time the vice president represented the president in Lagos in the official visit that the president was supposed to make, one of the speeches he read on behalf of the president was such that Lagos, under this program, would be getting about 50,000 jobs for young graduates. And I want to believe that they will do the same thing in Abia, they will do the same thing in Enugu, they will do the same thing in Kabi, and do the same thing, you know. That is because unemployed graduates are not only unique to one particular part of the country.
You know, I think that the normative on federal character was put in our constitution because of our diversity, and it must be looked at properly. I've heard people saying that federal character should be cancelled, and I want to say that even in the United States of America, it is not called federal character, but it operates. It's in the way of affirmative action, it's in the way of the protection of the Red Indians and the interests of the Aborigines, it's in the way of several normatives in the United States of America. In Australia, in South Africa, you have it. Governance thrives best when there's inclusiveness.
Sense of inclusiveness, yes.
When there's a sense of brotherhood, when there's a sense of brotherly love, and when there's a sense of togetherness. And I do sincerely think that that is where our government must improve on its rating. I believe that the time has come for us to begin to see every Nigerian, whether you be from Karunamuda, Eket, Abeokuta, the TV town of Katsina Alia, or wherever you are from, the time has come for us to begin to think about our collective patrimony as Nigerians. And I do sincerely believe that that shouldn't worry you. Whether I say I'm from Delta State, yes I am, because we have states in our constitution. But the federal character normative in chapter 2 of the constitution provides for a sense of inclusiveness that will work for progress. And I tell you, there is no part of this country that does not have great minds and great characters and great tendencies to support government in working well. And I want to add this to it, that perhaps the reason why the Vice President talked about Lagos and said that about 50,000 is a population. But in terms of percentage, I think that it should be about the same percent across the country, so that everybody will have a true sense of belonging, true sense of brotherhood. Because when that is done, I'll give you an instance, when justice, equity, and fairness, when the waters of freedom flows across our country, you find out that the Biafran agitation will etiolate. You find out that the South-South agitation will etiolate. You find out that fundamentally Nigerians actually love themselves. Most people do not know how close we are. He's not from Delta State. You know, most people do not know how close so many people from the north who are my friends are with me. Some of them are closer than people who are from my town. The point is that when we aggregate at the point of justice, equity, and fairness, Nigerians are awesome people. And I'll give you a practical instance, all pretty laughable though. When looters meet, they are in cahoots. When they discuss about how to take 800 million, 900 million, they are in cahoots. Their religion does not come to play. Their Christianness, their Islamness, their Yorubaness, their Igboness, their Hausaness, their Jokunness does not come to play.
They don't see the money.
They are united with the sides of the Ghana must go bags. Now, when we must, since we have agreed that the time to fix Nigeria is now, since we know that the urgency of now is to put Nigeria right, we must aggregate at that point of justice. And understanding that if we excuse corruption, we sow a bile seed that will chase not only our today, but rupture our tomorrow. So I do sincerely believe that the time has come for us to continue as one people. Ask Mr. President, like the father of the nation, to treat the nation as his children. And we know that we will have healthy children, unruly children, but the truth is that your children are your children. And we all belong together. That's why I applaud the fact that he's talking about dialogue with the Niger Delta, like so many of us have talked about. And then I think that fundamentally, when there's a sense of justice, a sense of equity, a sense of togetherness, a sense of brotherhood, a sense of inclusiveness, this country will enjoy sizable peace, and prosperity will be a guarantee.
Okay, now talking about peace, let's digress a little. Yesterday, no, 2 days ago now, the Vice President met with governors from the South-South to discuss the issue of the Niger Delta, and the militants and all that. But just yesterday, there was another explosion.
Is that surprising? To be honest, look, in a guerrilla war environment, and I said it earlier on today, in a guerrilla war environment, when you are orchestrating a negotiation or an arrangement of peace, the obviously weaker party would want to create,
a sense of braggadocio.
so that, when we enter that negotiation, make we not say with the small boys, we will not come there. But we now know say
we're strong.
You know what? We have a new opportunity to talk to ourselves, reason together, correct some injustices. At the end of the day, the people in the Niger Delta will prosper more if there were to be peace based on justice, not just the peace of the graveyard. There are some things I won't take too. You come into my neighborhood, you despoil my environment, you just act as though you are above the law. And even when I want to complain, my government, who should be taking my sides, most times because of what they get from you, either directly to the public coffers or what they give to some officers of state, they will go and give the impression as though we are just so I am not faced by, I believe that if fairness comes into the picture, justice comes into the picture, peace is not in a, peace, getting peace in the Niger Delta will naturally, organically come into. And it's not only about the Niger Delta. The last time I was here, and I was telling you that it would be intellectually lazy of anybody reviewing the Nigeria or critiquing the Nigeria of today to only over focus on the Niger Delta at the expense of some of the other parts of the country where, as a result of lack of opportunities, people are now thinking that grandstanding and brigandage can bring reward.
Now, on a final note, let's look at how the government can get this straight and make this really work for the benefit of Nigerians.
I think that in looking at that, I want to bring something to the fore. The fact that villainy tends to become an attractive industry is because the code of justice is thin, the code of equity is thin, and the code of brotherhood centered on true love is light. The time has come for governance to engage the people effectively and reassure every segment, every component part of Nigeria. But I tell you that the best way to move, and I appeal to the leaders of my party to look at it, we talked about the need for an organic restructuring of this country before the last government lost power. It is tried to look at that effectively, because you cannot cut a tree from the fruits. We must begin to look at how we give every part of this country a sense of belonging. I'll give you a practical instance. When you call talk about Nigeria, we call ourselves the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That's on paper, but we're not true to it. What we are is actually a unitary system where at the end of the month, every state governor comes to Abuja to get a handout. I do sincerely think that the way to move this country forward is to decentralize the organic structure. Ensure that we have devolution of power through fiscal federalism and resource control. If we do that, I'll give you a big surprise. We'll return to the halcyon days of our nationhood, where in the First Republic, the Southwest had television before State of France, where the most beautiful city and big city of Ibadan, Enugu, Jos, and the likes were built. We'll have the pyramids of Sisem and granite return in the north. We'll have the silos of cocoa return in the southwest. We'll have the palm fronts and the palm fields and the rubber plantations to sprout again in the Midwest. And then we will see the food basket of Benue and Lokoja sprout. We will see coal in the southeast become a mainstay of economy. And then, do you know what ultimately happens? Jobs will be created. Governors will not come to Abuja to ask for FAC. Governors will not be owing salaries. And then ultimately, it's so easy but true. At the end of the day, you find out that there will be some sense of adventure, creativity, business-oriented leadership across this country. And what else happens? This situation where the governors have the alibi, they always blame Abuja when people ask them, why are you not doing this? Will disappear, because the people know that you generate resources and you're the one who gives money to Abuja. You're the one who gives money to the federal government. So they'll ask you, we know that you give 20% or 30% to Abuja. So where is the remaining resources? Now leadership will become responsible and responsive. Leaders will become accountable to the people, and that's the way to go. So my appeal to our leaders who understand this programmatic and organogram is to help Mr. President understand that the urgency of now is to etiolate conflict across the country by allowing devolution of power, resource control, and through fiscal federalism, is to ensure that the nomadic herdsmen have their states building ranches because they will make profit. Anywhere you have comparative advantage over the others, deal with it and pay tax and royalties to the federal government. That's the way to etiolate the Biafra agitation. That's the way to kill the conflict and the crisis in the South-South. That's the way to ensure that this country is largely at peace with itself and progress and prosperity becomes a given.
Okay, let's have you. Well,
I want to believe that a government that has thought this strategically to enact this kind of program would also be sober enough to make sure that policing its implementation and creating mechanisms that will make sure that it is implemented in such a way that it will make the impact that was envisaged for it. That government is also serious about that, because it will be a disaster. Given where we are now, it will be a disaster to have this much punch thrown and not hit the target we need it for.
okay, that's really beautiful. Well, that's been it on our discussion today, social investment programs, a panacea to unemployment crisis. I've had my guests really talk about this matter, preferring solutions, giving suggestions to the government on how these programs can be effectively implemented. How do we avoid corruption in this? How do we ensure that this project gets to the real targets, the real audience who should benefit from it? Special thanks to my guest today, Bola Obaba, public affairs analyst, always around when it's called on. Thank you for being here. And of course, also Chris.
I always tell you too that public affairs analyst know they give me food. My entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So enterprise
yeah.
give me food.
That actually even makes you very fit for today.
Maybe they put the title of the entrepreneur.
You can be sure of that. And of course, Chris Umakobia Jr., the Director General, Change Ambassadors of Nigeria, and one of the contestants or candidates, presidential candidate during the 2011 general elections. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, and God bless Nigeria.
God bless Nigeria. Well, that's been it. Let's take a cue from all of these. Let's make Nigeria a better place for all of us to live in. We are first from Nigeria before we're from different states. God bless Nigeria. I am Abosedi Omowi. Have a pleasant day.
Is it crazy or autocracy? Or what type of crazy is that? Except crazy.
News making the headlines.
Black Maria is to carry criminals, child looters that are in government today.
Sometimes it gets confrontational.
Slap you in the face. Excuse me, don't put words into my mouth. Whatever it is that will bring our military to disrepute, I say to hell.
On Core Digest,
I want to know why I should be believing them.
Every weekday, we bring all of these together and take them to the court of public opinion.
Everybody has the right in Nigeria.
Where you are the judge.